Hello, hello, hello. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you on a Wednesday afternoon, beautiful day in Chicago. I'm assuming that most teachers are basically the country is back into the classrooms and children have gone back to school throughout the world. Okay. They've gone back to school, and we're just hoping and praying that everybody has a wonderful and a very enriching school year. This basically would be the first time the children have been back to a full school, full school production, and to the point where they didn't have to really delay anything, and hopefully they'll be there for the length of time they need to be there, which is something we hope will be okay, take them throughout the whole year. And the consistency is what we're looking for. The consistency is very, very important. So, my name is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, and I'm coming to you. And if this is your first time seeing me, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a retired Chicago public school teacher, and I have over 30 years experience. I taught at Chicago Public Schools, and then I did some other teaching in other areas like Malcolm X College and so forth. I was a preschool teacher at Malcolm X College, and then from there I obtained a teaching position for Chicago Public Schools, where I taught about 30 years. Well, my interest in working with adults that are teachers and mentoring or tutoring, working or coaching adults that are teachers, came when I was allowed to. Of course, my student teachers coming in and out of my classroom throughout the years and so forth. And then at the same time, Chicago Public Schools offered a mentoring program that was very, 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 very intense. And it offered individuals who had degrees and first bachelor's degrees. And then they had bachelor's degrees, and then they were allowed to choose second degrees or second careers, and which chose to go into education. Okay, that's basically it. These were second career individuals that chose to be an educator, and so there was an intense mentoring program that took place, and these individuals were mentored, I think, for about 8 weeks, and I was one of the mentor instructors where I would teach them how to go talk about classroom management, transitioning from from courses to courses, and just a little bit of everything that sort of helped them out. And then once I had retired, or before I retired, I went and got my master's in teacher leadership, which also encouraged me and involved me with working with individuals that were going into the field of education. And then one more thing that allowed me or enticed me to do this more was working for Teach for America. And I worked with young people that were going for a master's degree in teacher as being teachers. And so they were, situated throughout the whole Chicago area. And I would go in and work with them weekly and help them with situations. And that was hands-on learning. That was hands-on learning, hands-on teaching that they went through. They were taking classes at night, but they were teaching during the day. So more than anything else, we are at the point where the children are going back, and teachers, in order for you, I feel, to have a very successful year, you need to have your tools. And your tools, of course, is classroom management and lesson planning. I'm just going to be honest. Those are the two basic tools I believe you need in order to have a successful teaching career. And so, what for the last couple of days, what I have been talking about is lesson plans. And yesterday, I talked about why lesson plans were having an effective lesson plan was very important, because it drives the lesson. It drives you throughout the day. You're consistently, constantly teaching these young people about things that they have no knowledge about, you would assume. Okay. Language arts, English, math, social studies, science, you name it, you're the one that they're depending on in order to teach it to them. So today, my topic is after why effective lesson planning is needed. Today, I'm going to talk about the steps that you need in other words, what does that lesson plan look like? And I look at a lesson plan as being a guide. I've said that before, But at the same time, it's like a play. You have to have the beginning, the middle, the end. You're basically on stage. You're basically on stage as to how you want the children to respond to whatever you're teaching. And did a little bit of research and came up with some things. I found out basically things I have been doing in the past or things that they are doing today, in order for that lesson to be exciting, to be engaging, so on and so forth. And some of the steps that we're talking about, you cannot, I have found that you just can't stand there and just start talking. There has to be some type of introduction. And what I've been reading about lately is that what's more important than anything else, you need to find out how much of the particulars, how much of the subject matter do the children already know about. We have a tendency as educators to just imagine that all children have had the same experiences throughout life, and that's just not true. That's just not true. Children are coming from different homes, different backgrounds, and different environments. And sometimes it will tell you can tell a child that has basically been raised in the inner city than a child that basically has grown up on the farm. But these are the type of students you may have in front of you, and so you just can't put every all of the children in the same box. You need to delve into their background and their environments to find exactly what they have been exposed to, what they know about, what they do, who's at the house. And, in other words, are their parents high school graduates? Okay. And that even gets into the point where you're sending homework home, where the child has to complete homework, but the parents may not know how to complete the homework either. That's a whole different subject matter. So, a good lesson for a good lesson plan, what would happen? It's broken up into three different things, and I have it on my iPad. They said before the class, during the class, and after the class. I'll say those three steps again: before the class, during the class, and after the class. And basically, it says before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson. Okay? Before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson. So, if I tap into before the lesson, what is being suggested, and I totally agree, identify the learning objectives. That means you, as the educator, what do you want the children to learn? What do you want them to have? What do you want to accomplish during this particular lesson plan? What knowledge do you want them to have after you have taught this particular lesson? And then after that, so your objectives have been set either by your district or your state. And a lot of the basic objectives that still, I would say, pretty much prevalent within the United States is Common Core objectives. And they at one time they tried to basically put all of the states of the whole United States on the same level as far as what children were going to learn in third grade, second grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, so on and so forth. And so a child in Chicago in third grade would be learning the same thing a child in Michigan in third grade would be learning. And it goes so on and so forth like that. So those objectives have to be set. And basically you're writing objectives that are going to be going for your particular grade as to your children and what you want them to learn. And a lot of times the objectives will expand from September to June. And believe you me, you're not going to always be able to meet the objectives. And what's even more important, sometimes all of your children are not going to be able to meet the objectives. I have said to myself, I never have considered myself to be a failure as a teacher because I maybe never have been able to get the children to a level of completion that the powers that be said they should be. And when children came to me in September, I really met the children where they were. I had third graders, but I still had some third graders that were working on a first grade and second grade level. So I had to meet them exactly where they were and bring them up to the level where they would be able to accomplish some of the goals for third grade. And so I made my own goal for my students in my room that there would be some movement. The child that came to me in September would not be the same child that left in June. In other words, they would have some more knowledge, maybe not the knowledge that would meet the objectives for that particular grade, but as long as they had more knowledge of before they, than what they came to me with, that was very important to me. As long as there was some movement and some growth. And that's what I based my teaching skills on. That's what I based my lessons on. That the children that came to me in September would be have a little bit more knowledge when they left me in June. And of course, it didn't always agree to the office or to the state, but that's what I had to do because the children came to me. I didn't give birth to them. So I really didn't know who was sitting in front of me. But after I learned who they were and found out the skills they needed in order to be able to learn what they needed to learn in third grade, those are the things that I worked on more than anything else. So the objectives are in place. Then you plan specific learning activities and assessments and the sequence of the lesson. What's going to be the first part of the lesson, the second part, the third part. And sometimes before you go to the second part, the first part has to be instilled in them as far as what they're supposed to do. And you can look at a lesson and decide that that lesson is only going to take like maybe 30 or 40 minutes. I have taken one lesson that I started on Monday and I have stretched it out throughout the whole week. It was okay with me. I didn't have a problem with that because when I finally got finished with the lesson, the children did have the skills and knowledge they needed in order to know that particular subject. And that was satisfying to me. That was satisfying to me. I knew what it took for them to learn. So if it took 2 or 3 days, if it took one day for them to get it, then that's fine. But then I'm looking at the percentage of how many of the children did get it. Was it 70? Was it 85%? Was it 95%? And then if it was 95%, I'm not going to leave that 5% behind. I'm going to pull them along and maybe do a special lesson just for those particular children because do have those students in your room that are special needs and IEPs and different things like that. Language is even sometimes a big factor in those types of things. So you can't leave any children behind, but whatever it takes and however long it takes for you to be able to get out and to do that particular lesson plan in any of the core subject groups of social studies, science, math, and reading, take the time in order for the children to learn. Okay. And then, like I said before, create a realistic timeline. Yes, a realistic timeline means that maybe it's not going to happen in one day. It may take 2 days. And then, of course, if it takes 2 days, always review what you did the day before. Always go back and review what you did the day before. And by engaging the children in the lesson themselves, they have a tendency of owning the lesson. They have a tendency of owning the lesson, making it become theirs. So you want to engage them, talking to them and say, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? And find out what their prior experiences are so that they can be a part of the lesson. It's nothing that's just not sitting on the top of a table and everybody grabs something. Okay, no, that doesn't make sense. So you want the children to be able to be a part of whatever you're teaching from the very beginning, from the very beginning, from the very beginning. And plan a lesson closure. In other words, if you start a particular lesson and you need to move on to the next class that you're going to be teaching, be it science or whatever, the next subject, then close the lesson out and say, children, I know we got excited about this, but we're going to continue this on tomorrow. And first thing in the morning, somebody remind me, who's going to remind me that we need to continue this lesson? And that way you're involving them. And so whatever you have taught that first time, they have grasped it and they have owned part of it, which makes them feel very valuable about what's going on in that particular classroom. So now we're going to talk about during the lesson. It says share the lesson plan with your students helps by sharing the lesson plan with your students helps to keep them more engaged and on track. That I totally agree with that. And that's something that from the very beginning, how you start that lesson, how you how you talk about boys and girls. We're getting ready to delve into how cars are made. Oh my goodness. How many of you have a car at home? How many of you have parents have a car? How many of you have a car? And of course, that's a time for laughter because they don't have a car, but some of them may raise their hands and say they do have a car. Okay, how many of your parents have a car? We're gonna learn about cars. What's the important thing that cars have? If I was to draw a car on the board, what would it look like? And then you may want to give them a pay. This is not in your lesson plan, but you may want to give them a piece of paper and say, everybody draw your favorite car. What does it look like? What color is it? How many parts does it have? And so you just take that lesson to the highest range of excitement so that the children will become excited about what they're learning about. So you engage them immediately. You make them feel that they have helped you do this, which they are. They're going to help you do this. In fact, they may end up teaching you about some things. They may end up teaching you about some things about cars. Oh, my mom and my dad has a car, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so you're delving into the lessons so deep that the children are excited to get back to it the next day. That's if you haven't finished the lesson. And each lesson I have found out that I can take a lesson and I may have taught the lesson and the whole lesson on Monday, but I may bring it back to the children's remembrance on that Wednesday or Friday. Say, how many of you remember we talked about cars on Monday? How many of you still have that car, that special car that you would like to have when you grow up in your desk and whatever? And then, of course, we can do a bulletin board. We can have the children do discussions with each other about the cars they drew and what the name of the car, give the car a name, what colors, and you bringing in all kinds of things. This car is going to travel out of the country. Where would your car go? That's bringing in the social studies. Okay, there's wheels on your car. What makes wheels go round and round? You break out into the wheels on the bus. Okay, you never know. It takes you into all kinds of different imaginative stories and words and songs and things like that. That's how exciting a lesson should be. And if you start out that way, you will be surprised how enthusiastic children are waiting to see what you're going to come to them with next. And then they said after the class, take an assessment. Okay, everybody drew that car. What were the important things that we had to find out about cars? And then they would raise their hands, and you would put the vocabulary on the board. And then you may want to even give them a short homework assignment. All right, I want you to go home, and I want you to maybe find a magazine or a newspaper, and just cut out pictures of cars. And we're just going to make a car collage on our bulletin board. And that's one lesson. And that lesson got excited. It involved the children, and it engaged the children. You were not standing there preaching to them and telling them a car has four wheels. It goes bound. No, 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 no. You can't do that. And I'm saying this works with third grade, but this will even work with sixth graders. You'd be surprised how excited they get about various subjects. And you can take that one particular subject and just take it into 15 different directions and still be able to do what you have to do. So at the end of that lesson, or maybe by the end of that week, sometimes I would do an assessment at the end of the week for something I taught maybe Monday and Tuesday, just to see exactly how much of the children remembered, how their engagement was as far as what they recalled, and then of course having them maybe write like a paragraph about what we learned on that particular day, and it gets them involved, and you'd be surprised how it stays on their mind, it stays in their brains, and you can always bring that particular lesson up later on in the year and do something and just take it to the next level. Lessons never end. You just take them to the next level and to the next level and to the next level. And before you know it, children have vast knowledge about one particular title or one particular subject. You'll be surprised how it happens like that. I got excited about this. I just started remembering some of the things I did as a teacher. I was very animated. I came in excited. I would get excited about every lesson I taught. And of course, my lessons would have a beginning and a middle and an end. But in the meantime, if I saw that lesson going in a particular direction, it was not necessary for me to get back on track. As long as the children were engaged, I took it wherever we wanted to lead it to, so on and so forth, And so this is what I get excited about as far as teaching. These are one of the things I got excited about is teaching. I made my lessons my own. I made the curriculums that I had to teach my own also. And I brought it to the class to the point where these children knew that what was going on in our classroom, and the same thing can be, being taught across the hall. But I took it on as a personal a lesson for me to get my children to become excited about something that I was teaching, and it worked. It worked. It worked a lot. It worked a lot. So here we go. If you need help with your lesson plans, go over to my website, aureliadavis.com. I have created a lesson audit, and click on the work tab button so that you can book a session with me. I would love to talk to you more about your lessons, and more than anything else, what I'm feeling and finding more than anything else is that teachers are doing lessons that really cannot their children really cannot relate to. And when I say that, I mean that teaching in an urban setting, you don't just assume children have different the environment that they're coming from. It might be a poor household. You don't start talking about families and assume that every child has a mother and a father and siblings. You can't do that nowadays. You can't do that nowadays. You can't assume when you if you're doing a lesson on families that every child has a mother and a father. They may have two mothers, they may have two fathers. So you have to fix that lesson to be a part of the child's life. You have to go into their little life, into their little world, and basically uh, take that lesson and make it relevant to them. Make it relevant to them, because if it's not relevant to them, then they're not going to get it. They may not even want to get it. And you just want to include every child in that classroom and make them feel a part of whatever you're teaching in that room is makes them feel engaged. And it gulps and it wraps you wrap your arm around them so that they become can become active learners. That means they open up their minds to whatever you're teaching, and that makes you a good teacher. So if you have having an issue with your lesson plans, go over to my website, aureliadavis.com, click on the Work With Me tab, and book a session. And I'll get to you as soon as possible. Keep teaching and have a great day.